You didn't fall in love. You fell for a fantasy.
I was under Sarah's white crossover at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, replacing her brake pads like the good husband I'd always been, when I heard her voice drift through the open garage door. She was on the kitchen phone, speaker turned up loud enough that I could hear every word. "I'm telling you, Jessica, I'm so far out of his league it's embarrassing," Sarah laughed, that cruel sound I'd been hearing more often lately. "Tom's still down there fixing my car like some mechanic while I'm planning my future with someone who actually has ambition." I froze under the chassis, wrench in hand, oil staining my work shirt. 22 years of marriage, and this was how I found out. "Does he suspect anything about you and Brad?" Jessica's voice crackled through the speaker. "Tom? Please. He's too busy playing with his little security company to notice I've been working late 3 nights a week. Brad says I deserve better than a washed-up boxer who peaked in high school." My hands tightened around the wrench. Washed-up boxer. That stung more than it should have. I'd built Midwest Security from nothing after my boxing days ended, employed 12 people, kept food on our table, and paid for Sarah's business degree. But apparently that wasn't enough for someone out of my league. "Where are you meeting him tomorrow?" Jessica asked. "The Riverside Motel on Highway 9. Brad's got the afternoon free, and Tom thinks I'm at that marketing seminar in Springfield." I slid out from under the car, my back aching, my pride shattered. Through the kitchen window, I could see Sarah pacing in her silk pajamas, the ones I'd bought her for Christmas, gesturing animatedly as she planned her betrayal. "I just need to figure out how to break it to Tom," she continued. "Brad thinks I should wait until after his promotion comes through. Then we can afford the divorce lawyers." The promotion. Brad Morrison worked for Pinnacle Security, our biggest competitor. I'd been wondering how they kept underbidding us on contracts. Now I knew. I gathered my tools quietly, my mind already working. Sarah wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd picked the wrong opponent. The next morning, I made coffee like always, kissed her cheek like always, told her to have a good day at her seminar like always. She smiled that fake smile I'd been too blind to recognize and promised to call when she got to Springfield. Instead, I called my brother Mike. "I need a favor," I said when he answered, "and it involves your company van." Mike ran an electrical business, which meant his van was invisible, just another service vehicle on the road, perfect for surveillance. "What's going on, Tommy?" "Sarah's having an affair. I need proof before she takes half of everything I've built." Mike was quiet for a moment. "You sure about this?" "Dead sure. Can you meet me at the Riverside Motel at 2? I'll be there." At 1:45, I parked Mike's van 3 spaces down from room 237, camera ready. At 2:10, Sarah's crossover pulled into the lot. She'd changed into a red dress I'd never seen before, her hair done up the way she used to do it for our anniversaries. At 2:15, Brad Morrison's silver BMW pulled up beside her. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, pretty boy handsome, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. He kissed Sarah right there in the parking lot, his hands all over her like she was his property. I took pictures, lots of pictures. They disappeared into the motel room and I waited. 2 hours later, they emerged looking satisfied and guilty. More pictures. But I wasn't done. As Brad's BMW pulled out of the lot, I walked over to it with my pocket knife. 4 tires, 4 clean slashes. Then I tucked a note under his windshield wiper. "Enjoy the walk, Romeo." A concerned citizen, I took a selfie standing next to his disabled car, grinning like an idiot. Sometimes the old-fashioned approaches work best. Sarah came home that evening acting like nothing had happened, chattering about her seminar and how much she'd learned about market positioning. I nodded and smiled, playing the clueless husband while inside my anger burned cold and calculating. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Oh, fixed Mrs. Henderson's security system, bid on the Morrison account downtown." I watched her face carefully. "Funny thing, though, Brad Morrison from Pinnacle called, said he had car trouble this afternoon, asked if we did roadside assistance." Sarah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Really? That's weird." "Yeah, I told him we stick to security work. Suggested he call AAA. I took a sip of wine. Poor guy sounded pretty frustrated. The next few days, the gossip mill in our neighborhood started churning. Mrs. Patterson from next door had seen me at the motel. Apparently, she'd been visiting her sister who worked housekeeping there. By Thursday, half the block was whispering about Tom Mitchell's midlife crisis and whether I was having an affair. I let them talk. Sometimes the best camouflage is letting people draw the wrong conclusions. Meanwhile, my business started hemorrhaging clients. Pinnacle Security was suddenly underbidding us on every contract, somehow knowing our exact quotes. I'd suspected industrial espionage before, but now I knew the source. Sarah had access to all my files, my computer, my phone. She'd been feeding Brad information for months. Friday night, Sarah came home wearing new jewelry, a gold bracelet I definitely hadn't bought her. "Nice bracelet," I said. She glanced down like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. "Oh, this old thing? I've had it forever." "Funny, I don't remember it." "You don't remember a lot of things, Tom." Her voice had an edge now, the mask slipping. "Maybe if you paid more attention to the important things instead of playing security guard, you'd notice more." Our daughter Kelly, home from college for the weekend, looked up from her phone. "Dad, Mom's right. You're kind of oblivious sometimes." That hurt. Kelly had always been Daddy's little girl. But lately, she'd been distant, spending more time with Sarah, whispering in corners. I wondered what stories Sarah had been telling her. Saturday night, there was a company mixer for the local business association. Sarah insisted we go. Said it would be good for networking. I agreed, but not for the reasons she thought. The mixer was held at the Marriott downtown, all the local business owners schmoozing and pretending to like each other. Sarah worked the room like a politician, introducing herself as a marketing consultant instead of my wife. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Brad Morrison held court near the bar, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. He was younger than me by at least 10 years, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having your nose broken or your dreams crushed. When he saw Sarah, his face lit up like Christmas morning. I watched them from across the room, the way they looked at each other, the casual touches that lasted just a second too long. Other people were starting to notice, too. Jim Bradley from the Chamber of Commerce nudged his wife and nodded in their direction. The whispers were starting. That's when I made my move. I walked to the bar, ordered a scotch and soda, and positioned myself right behind Brad's little fan club. When there was a lull in conversation, I raised my glass. "Excuse me, everyone. I'd like to propose a toast." The room quieted, all eyes on me. Sarah looked panicked. "To Brad Morrison," I said loudly, "and all the men who think they can win a woman by stealing someone else's business secrets." I paused, letting that sink in. "And to the women who think they're trading up when they're really just trading down." I downed my scotch and slammed the glass on the bar. Cheers. The silence was deafening. Brad's face had gone white, then red. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You're drunk, Mitchell," Brad said, trying to recover his composure. "Actually, I'm stone sober. For the first time in months." I stepped closer to him, close enough that he had to look up to meet my eyes. "But you're right about one thing. I have been blind. Thanks for helping me see clearly." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Brad? Next time you want to compete with me, try doing it honestly. You might learn something." I walked out of that mixer with my head high, leaving behind a room full of shocked faces and probably ending any chance of rebuilding my reputation in this town. But sometimes you have to burn bridges to stop your enemies from crossing them. The fallout from the mixer was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, half our remaining clients had canceled their contracts. Word spread fast in a town this size. Tom Mitchell had lost his mind, made a scene, probably drinking too much since his marriage fell apart. Of course, nobody wanted to hire a security company run by a man who couldn't keep his own life secure. Sarah didn't come home Sunday night. She texted around midnight. "Staying at Jessica's. Need space to think." Jessica Hartwell had been Sarah's best friend since college, her maid of honor, Kelly's godmother. If Sarah was staying there, it meant Jessica was helping coordinate this whole betrayal. That hurt almost as much as Sarah's affair. I sat in my empty house drinking coffee and planning. The old Tom would have begged, pleaded, tried to win his wife back with flowers and promises to change. But the old Tom was gone, buried under the weight of 22 years of taking people at face value. The new Tom understood that when someone declares war on you, you don't negotiate, you win. First, I moved our money. Not all of it, that would be illegal, but everything that was legally mine. The business accounts, my retirement fund, the savings account I'd been contributing to since before we were married. I opened new accounts at a different bank, one where Sarah didn't know the manager personally. Then I canceled her car insurance. The crossover was registered in my name, purchased with my money. If she wanted to drive it, she could pay for her own coverage. Next, I changed the locks on the house. Perfectly legal. It was my house, bought before our marriage, never refinanced with her name on the deed. Sarah had always insisted we keep our finances separate for tax purposes. That decision was about to bite her hard, but the real masterstroke required help from my brother Mike. I need you to do some digging, I told him Tuesday morning over breakfast at Mel's Diner. Corporate records, business filings, anything public about Pinnacle Security and Brad Morrison. Mike stirred his coffee thoughtfully. What are you looking for? Leverage. These people want to play dirty. Let's see how they like it when someone plays dirtier. It took Mike 3 days to find what I needed. Pinnacle Security had been inflating their insurance coverage on bid applications, claiming they carried $5 million in liability when they actually carried $2 million. It was fraud, technically, but more importantly, it was grounds for contract cancellation. Even better, Brad Morrison's resume was full of creative embellishments. That MBA from Northwestern? He'd taken 3 classes there 15 years ago. His 5 years of management experience at his previous job? He'd been an assistant manager for 18 months before getting fired for inappropriate workplace conduct. But the real gold mine was Jessica Hartwell's connection to all this. Mike had dug deep into corporate records and found something interesting. 3 years ago, Jessica had applied for a job at Pinnacle Security. She'd been rejected, but not before Brad Morrison had interviewed her. According to the notes Mike found in a public records request, Pinnacle had been sued by another applicant for discrimination. Brad had told Jessica she wasn't executive material and suggested she try something more suited to her skill set. Jessica had never mentioned applying there. She'd never mentioned knowing Brad before Sarah's affair started, which meant this whole thing wasn't just about Sarah falling for a younger man. This was revenge, orchestrated by someone who'd been nursing a grudge for 3 years. I called Sarah Wednesday evening. "Tom, is that you?" She sounded surprised, maybe even hopeful. "We need to talk. Can you meet me at the house tomorrow night?" I don't know if that's a good idea. It's not a request, Sarah. We're still married and there are things we need to discuss. Legal things. She was quiet for a long moment. Okay, 7 o'clock. And Sarah, bring Jessica. I think she'd find the conversation interesting. Thursday at 7 sharp, Sarah's crossover pulled into our driveway. She'd brought Jessica, just like I'd asked. They both looked nervous, like they were walking into a trap. They were. I opened the door before they could knock. "Ladies, come in." Our living room felt different now, like a stage set for a play I was finally ready to perform. I'd arranged the furniture so they'd have to sit on the couch while I took the chair across from them, the power position. "Coffee?" I offered. "Tom, let's just get this over with," Sarah said. She looked tired, older somehow. The guilt was wearing on her. Of course, right to business. I sat down and opened the folder I'd prepared. "I know about Brad Morrison. I know about the motel. I know about the business information you've been feeding him." Sarah's face went white. Jessica reached over and squeezed her hand. "I also know," I continued, looking directly at Jessica, "about your job application at Pinnacle 3 years ago and what Brad Morrison said about you not being executive material." Jessica's composure cracked for just a second. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You've been planning this for 3 years, haven't you? Waiting for the right moment to get back at Brad for humiliating you. What better way than to seduce him with someone else's wife than watch it all fall apart?" "That's insane," Jessica said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? You introduced Sarah to Brad at that charity function 6 months ago. You encouraged her to join the business association where he was a member. You've been feeding her complaints about our marriage, telling her she deserves better." I turned to Sarah. "The question is, did you know you were being used, or are you just that naive?" Sarah looked between Jessica and me, confusion replacing defiance. "Jessica, what is he talking about?" "He's desperate, Sarah. He's making things up to try to break us apart." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Jessica's voice filled the room. "Brad Morrison thinks he's so much better than everyone else. Someone should take him down a peg. Someone should show him what it feels like to be humiliated." It was from a conversation I'd recorded at our Christmas party last year when Jessica had had too much wine and gotten bitter about successful men. I'd forgotten about it until Mike reminded me to check my old files. "You used my wife to get revenge on a man who rejected you," I said quietly. "You destroyed my marriage for your own petty satisfaction." Jessica stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Sarah, let's go. But Sarah wasn't moving. She was staring at Jessica with growing horror. You told me Brad noticed me at the charity function. You said he asked about me. He did. No. Sarah's voice was cold now. You introduced yourself to him first. You brought him over to meet me. I remember now. The truth was finally sinking in. Sarah might have been naive, but she wasn't stupid. And you've been pushing me to leave Tom from the beginning. Every marriage has problems, but you kept telling me I deserved better, that I was settling. Sarah stood up too, backing away from Jessica. You orchestrated this whole thing. Sarah, please. Get out! Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Get out of my house? It's not your house anymore, I said quietly. I changed the locks yesterday. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. Both women turned to stare at me. The crossover's insurance was canceled too. If you want to drive it, you'll need to get your own policy. I stood up and walked to the window. Your personal belongings are in boxes on the front porch. I was very careful to only pack things that were clearly yours. You can't just throw me out, Sarah said. Actually, I can. This house was mine before we married, and it's mine now. You want half of it? You'll have to fight for it in court. I turned back to face them. Of course, that means all the evidence of your affair becomes public record, including the photos. Sarah's face crumpled. Tom, please, we can work this out. No, we can't. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't good enough for you. I opened the front door. Both of you need to leave now. Jessica stormed out first, her heels clicking angrily on the porch steps. Sarah lingered for a moment, looking around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I said. I'm sorry I wasted 22 years on someone who never respected me enough to end things honestly. After they left, I sat in my empty house and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The war wasn't over yet, but I'd won the first major battle, and I was just getting started. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in small-town social warfare. Word spread fast about Sarah and Jessica's falling out. Apparently, they'd had a screaming match in Jessica's driveway that half the neighborhood witnessed. Sarah was staying at a motel now, the same Riverside motel where she'd been meeting Brad, which struck me as poetically appropriate. Brad Morrison, meanwhile, was discovering that his affair had consequences beyond losing his source of insider information. Someone, not me, I swear, had sent copies of his fraudulent insurance documents to every client Pinnacle had stolen from us. 3 major contracts were canceled, and the state licensing board opened an investigation. I was having lunch at Mel's diner when Brad walked in. He looked like heck unshaven, his expensive suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. When he spotted me in my usual booth, his face went dark. This is all your fault, he said, sliding into the seat across from me without invitation. Is it? I took a bite of my sandwich. I wasn't the one filing false insurance claims. You know what I mean. You destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, Brad. I just stopped letting you steal from me. I looked up at him. This man who'd thought he could take my wife, my business, my life. How's Sarah, by the way? His jaw tightened. We're working things out. Are you? That's funny because I heard she's been calling you non-stop and you've been sending her straight to voicemail. I leaned back in the booth. Turns out she's not as attractive when she's not someone else's wife, is she? You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? See, the thing about men like you is that you don't actually want the women you chase. You want the thrill of taking something that belongs to someone else. Now that Sarah's free, she's just another desperate middle-aged woman with baggage. Brad's hands clenched into fists on the table. Shut up. The truth hurts, doesn't it? You never loved her. You just wanted to prove you could steal her from the washed-up boxer. I smiled. Except it turns out the washed-up boxer was smarter than you gave him credit for. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're done in this town, Brad. Nobody's going to trust you with their security after this. And nobody's going to hire a company that can't even do basic paperwork honestly. He stormed out of the diner, leaving me to finish my lunch in peace. 3 days later, Pinnacle Security filed for bankruptcy. But the real satisfaction came when Kelly called me. Dad, I owe you an apology. I was in my office, trying to rebuild what was left of my business. Hearing my daughter's voice, really hearing it without the teenage attitude, made my chest tight. You don't owe me anything, sweetheart. Yes, I do. Mom told me her version of what happened, but then I started hearing other things around town. And when Jessica came to see me, Jessica came to see you? She wanted me to take Mom's side in the divorce. She kept talking about how you were trying to destroy Mom's happiness, how you were being vindictive and cruel. Kelly's voice was shaky. But the things she said about you, they didn't sound like my dad at all. What kinds of things? She said you'd been harmful, that you'd threatened Mom, that you were dangerous. But Dad, I've lived with you my whole life. You've never even raised your voice at me, let alone hurt anyone. The pieces clicked into place. Jessica wasn't done with her revenge plot. She was trying to turn my own daughter against me. She also said some things about Mom and this Brad guy that were really detailed, like she'd been watching them or something. It was creepy, Dad. What did you tell her? I told her to leave me alone. And then I called Mom to ask her what was really going on. Kelly took a shaky breath. Mom broke down and told me everything. About the affair, about how Jessica had encouraged her, about how you'd figured it all out. I'm sorry you had to hear all that, Kelly. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you from the beginning. I should have known you'd never do anything without a good reason. That night, Kelly drove down from college to have dinner with me. We ordered pizza and sat in the living room, talking like we hadn't in years. So what happens now? She asked. Now I rebuild. The business, my reputation, my life. What about Mom? I thought about that. Sarah had been calling me daily for a week, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, always wanting to work things out. But every conversation came back to the same thing. She wanted to undo the consequences of her choices without actually taking responsibility for making them. Your mom made her decision. She chose to believe I wasn't good enough for her, so I'm giving her what she wanted, a life without me in it. That's really it? 22 years and it's just over? 22 years of me trying to be good enough for someone who was always looking for something better. I'm tired, Kelly. I'm tired of fighting for someone who doesn't want to be fought for. Kelly was quiet for a long moment. I think you're right, Dad, and I think you're stronger than any of us gave you credit for. The next morning, I got a call from Jim Bradley at the Chamber of Commerce. Tom, I wanted to apologize for the way things went at the mixer. A lot of us have been hearing the real story about what happened with your wife and that Morrison character. I appreciate that, Jim. More than that, I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in bidding on the Chamber's security contract. Our current company just went out of business, and frankly, we'd rather work with someone we can trust. It was a start. A small one, but a start. Over the next month, 3 more clients came back. They'd heard the truth about Pinnacle's fraudulent practices and realized they'd been manipulated into breaking contracts with a legitimate business. It wasn't enough to save everything I'd lost, but it was enough to keep the doors open. Sarah filed for divorce in November, asking for half of everything despite our prenuptial agreement. Her lawyer was expensive and aggressive, the kind who specialized in taking men to the cleaners. My lawyer was cheaper but smarter. He had a thick file of evidence documenting Sarah's adultery and her theft of proprietary business information. In a no-fault state, the adultery didn't matter much, but the industrial espionage was a different story. She could face criminal charges, my lawyer explained. Corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, conspiracy to defraud. Your wife's boyfriend might be out of business, but she's the one who actually stole the information. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting her lawyer might be more reasonable about the settlement if he understands the full scope of his client's legal exposure. The divorce was finalized in February. Sarah got her personal belongings, half of our joint savings, and her freedom. I kept the house, the business, and my self-respect. She moved to Kansas City, where she'd found a job with a marketing firm that didn't know about her recent history. Brad Morrison moved back to Chicago, where he was working as a car salesman at his brother-in-law's dealership. Jessica Hartwell was still in town, but she'd become a pariah. Word had gotten out about her role in orchestrating the affair, and in a community where marriage was still considered sacred, that made her untouchable. She'd lost her job at the real estate agency and was working at a call center on the outskirts of town. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was having a good day. Midwest Security had landed 2 major contracts. Kelly was graduating college in May, and I'd started dating a woman named Linda who owned a bookstore downtown. Nothing serious yet, but it felt good to have someone to talk to who didn't come with 22 years of baggage. That's when Jessica Hartwell walked into my office. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared like she'd been crying. The confident, manipulative woman who'd destroyed my marriage was gone, replaced by someone desperate and broken. "We need to talk," she said. My receptionist, Marie, looked at me questioningly. I nodded. "Give us a few minutes, Marie." When we were alone, Jessica collapsed into the chair across from my desk. "You destroyed my life," she said. "I didn't do anything to you, Jessica. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. You turned everyone against me. You made sure I lost my job, my friends, everything. I told the truth. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to play games with other people's marriages." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "You want to know the truth?" she said finally. "The real truth? I already know the truth." "No, you don't." She looked up at me, her eyes red and hollow. "It wasn't about Brad Morrison rejecting me, it was about you." That caught me off guard. "What?" "It was about you, Tom. It was always about you." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "I don't understand. Remember senior year of high school? The winter formal?" I did remember. I'd asked Jessica to the dance, but she'd turned me down, said she was going with someone else. A week later, I'd asked Sarah instead, and we'd been together ever since. "You asked me out," Jessica continued. "And I said no because I thought I was better than you. The boxer from the wrong side of town. I was waiting for someone more sophisticated." The pieces started falling into place. "But you never found him, did you?" "I found plenty of sophisticated men. They just didn't want me for anything more than a few months." Her voice was bitter now. "Meanwhile, you and Sarah built a life together, a real life, house, business, daughter, everything I thought I deserved. So you decided to take it apart. I decided to prove that Sarah didn't deserve it either, that she was just as shallow as I was." Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I thought if I could get her to throw away everything you'd built together, it would prove that your whole perfect life was a lie. And instead, you just proved that you're exactly as petty and vindictive as I thought." "I know." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I know what I am, but I've lost everything, Tom. My job, my reputation, my friends. I can't even get a decent apartment because word gets around about what I did." "Good." She looked up at me, shocked by the coldness in my voice. "You destroyed a 22-year marriage because you were jealous of what other people had built. You manipulated my wife, lied to my daughter, and tried to ruin my business. You think you deserve sympathy? I thought maybe we could work something out. You could put in a good word for me, tell people I was sorry, that I'd learned my lesson." I stood up and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of her. "Jessica, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are never going to recover from this. Not in this town, not with these people. Everyone knows what you did, and everyone knows why you did it. You're going to carry this with you for the rest of your life." "Tom, please. I'm not done. You want to know the difference between you and me? When life knocked me down, I got back up and rebuilt. When someone hurt me, I fought back, but I fought clean. You're a cancer. You destroy things just because you can't have them yourself." I walked back to my desk and sat down. "Get out of my office. Get out of my town. And if I ever see you near my daughter or anyone else I care about, I'll make sure the rest of your life is even more miserable than it already is." She stumbled out of the chair and toward the door, then turned back. "I really did love you, you know. In high school, I was just too proud to admit it." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. Just like you loved the idea of destroying me 30 years later. But you never actually knew me at all." After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the strange turns life takes. If Jessica had said yes to that dance invitation 30 years ago, I might never have married Sarah. Kelly might never have been born. My whole life would have been different, but I couldn't bring myself to regret any of it. Even the pain, even the betrayal. It had all led me to this moment, sitting in my own office, running my own business, finally understanding my own worth. Marie knocked on the door. "Everything okay, boss?" "Everything's fine, Marie. Better than fine, actually." That evening, I took Linda to dinner at the new steakhouse downtown. She was smart and funny and kind, and she didn't care that I was a divorced small business owner with a complicated past. She liked me for who I was, not who I might become or what I might give her. "You seem different tonight," she said over dessert. "Lighter, somehow." "I feel different, like I finally closed the book on a very long, very ugly chapter of my life." Want to talk about it? I thought about that. For months, I'd been carrying around anger and hurt and a need for vindication. But sitting there with Linda, looking at her genuine concern and affection, I realized I didn't need to carry any of that anymore. Maybe someday, but not tonight. I reached across the table and took her hand. Tonight, I just want to talk about the future. 6 months later, Sarah called me. She was getting married again, to a coworker in Kansas City. She wanted Kelly to be her maid of honor, and she wanted my permission to invite some of our old mutual friends to the wedding. I'm happy for you, I told her, and I meant it. I hope this one works out better. Tom, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices, but I want you to know that I never meant for things to get so ugly. I know. You got caught up in someone else's game, and by the time you realized it, it was too late to back out gracefully. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about that. Forgiveness was a complicated thing. I'd stopped being angry at Sarah months ago, but that wasn't the same as forgiveness. I think I already have, I said finally. We just weren't right for each other, Sarah. Maybe we never were. Maybe we just got comfortable and mistook that for love. Maybe. But we made a beautiful daughter together. Yes, we did. And she's the best thing either of us ever accomplished. After we hung up, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and red. Linda was inside making dinner, humming something off-key but cheerful. Kelly was coming home next weekend with her new boyfriend, a nice kid studying engineering. Life was good. Not perfect, not without complications, but good in a way that felt solid and real. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Heard Jessica Hartwell moved to Arizona. Guess she finally took your advice about leaving town. I deleted the message without responding. Jessica Hartwell was ancient history now, a cautionary tale about the price of letting bitterness consume your life. I'd learned something important from this whole mess. You can't control what other people do to you, but you can control how you respond. You can let their betrayals destroy you, or you can use them to build something stronger. I chose to build. Linda called from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. I finished my beer, stood up, and walked toward the house, toward my future, toward the life I'd earned by refusing to let other people's weaknesses become my own. Behind me, the sun disappeared behind the horizon, taking the last light of a very long, very difficult day with it.